A year ago I fell in love. His name was C.I., a race car driver, intense, possessive, yet incredibly gentle with me. I guarded our relationship fiercely. No one knew we were together, not even my agent. It was a fragile bubble just for us. On his birthday I planned a special dinner. But on the way to the hotel, chaos erupted. A massive truck out of control hurtling towards us. In the terrifying final moments before darkness claimed me, I saw C.I. wrench the steering wheel hard, angling the impact towards his side, then lunging over to shield me with his own body. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed. The good news: my face was untouched, miraculously unharmed. Only my shoulder required a few stitches. The bad news: C.I. was gone, vanished without a trace. I searched everywhere desperately for weeks, months, but he was simply gone. Then, much later at a glittering industry gala, I saw him. A man with C's exact face, his precise build, moving through the crowd with an air of cool command. But he claimed his name was Julian Chung. Not my C.I. I started seeing Julian Chung, because I missed C.I. with an ache so profound it felt like a physical wound. But Julian insisted he wasn't C.I. He hated hearing the name, hated the way my eyes would sometimes linger on his face, searching for someone else. "Don't look through me to see another man, Ava," he warned, his voice sharp as ice. To stay by his side, to grasp at the ghost of C.I. in this man's form, I tried desperately to break the habit, to call him Julian. But sometimes, lost in the heat of passion, the name would slip out, unbidden. "Seh." He would deliberately push me further then, making me lose control completely, before leaning close, biting my earlobe gently, his voice a low growl. "Ava Jiang, who am I?" "Say, Julian Chung." I'd gasp out between ragged breaths. Afterwards, he would disentangle himself immediately, leaving me bare and trembling on the sheets while he disappeared into the bathroom, offering no lingering tenderness. Lying there alone, a bitter tide of sadness would inevitably wash over me. He had to be C.I. There was a tiny distinct mole on his left pectoral muscle. C.I. had the exact same one. Yet he wasn't C.I. C.I. would hold me close after making love, kissing me softly, murmuring sweet nothings before finally letting me go. Julian offered only cool detachment. C.I. was the wild, passionate race car driver, full of fire and fierce pronouncements. Julian Chung was the shrewd, aloof businessman, his emotions locked behind an impenetrable facade. At that gala, the moment I heard his voice, deeper perhaps than C's, but with the same underlying timbre, my hand trembled, spilling champagne onto the polished floor. As a waiter discreetly cleaned the mess, I spotted him across the room, engaged in conversation, exuding an aura of sophisticated elegance. When I finally gathered the courage to approach him, calling out C.I., asking where he'd been, why he'd disappeared, he looked at me with eyes that were utterly blank, devoid of recognition, tinged with disdain. He dismissed me as just another starlet, probably 18th tier, trying to latch onto someone powerful. Frantically, I showed him the photos on my phone, us laughing, kissing, C.I. grinning from the cockpit of his race car. I recounted shared memories, private jokes, whispered promises. He merely quirked an eyebrow, a faint, dismissive smile playing on his lips. "Miss Jiang," he drawled, his tone laced with amusement. "Your technique is clumsy, I'll give you that. I haven't encountered this particular approach before. Evidence of a relationship between people of our disparate statuses conveniently existing only on your phone? Where else might one find proof of this supposed grand romance?" He believed the photos were fake, my memories fabricated fantasies. Our secret love, the world we built that existed only between us. He had no memory of it. It was as if it had never happened. Julian Chung maintained he had spent his entire life abroad, that this was his first time setting foot in this country. Did you lose your memory?" I finally choked out the question that haunted me, my fingers twisting together, my heart seeming to stutter in my chest. "Is that why you don't remember me?" He stared into my eyes for a long, unnerving moment before replying, his voice flat, final. "Ava Jiang, I am Julian Chung." Later that night, the mattress dipped behind me as Julian lay down. Hours seemed to pass in silence. Finally, I turned over, gazing at his sleeping face. C's face. The urge was irresistible. I reached out a trembling hand, lightly tracing the line of his strong brow, the curve of his lashes. "It is you, C.I., I whispered into the darkness, tears blurring his features. "Even the way your brow furrows slightly when you sleep. It's exactly the same." The man I thought asleep suddenly spoke, his voice low and dangerous. I told you. Don't let me hear that name again. One more time. He didn't finish the threat, but I knew. One more time and he would tell me to leave. Julian Chung didn't possess C's infinite patience. His willingness to constantly lower his boundaries for me. C.I. once held me close, his chin resting on top of my head, and asked softly when I wanted to get married. I was busy tracing the lines on his long, elegant fingers. That depends. I teased, looking up at him through my lashes. On when you plan to propose. Oh, and it absolutely has to be in a field of flowers. Promise me that and I'll definitely say yes. He tilted my face up, his eyes serious, and kissed me gently. You promise? His voice was husky. Don't you forget. I won't forget. Pinky swear. I held up my little finger. He solemnly hooked his own around mine, sealing the pact. Waking up now, the space beside me in Julian's bed was cold and empty. He was already gone. The remnants of the dream clung to me, leaving a dull ache of loss. Another dream about C.I. When I carefully carried the potted orchid into Julian's penthouse apartment, he was standing on the balcony, speaking intently on his phone. But his gaze immediately locked onto the delicate plant in my hands, his expression unreadable. The orchid was a birthday gift from C.I. He'd cultivated it himself, knowing my professed dislike for jewelry and my love for living things, for flowers and plants. Pretending not to notice Julian's intense stare, I found a sunny spot for the orchid, setting it down carefully, fussing with its leaves. He finished his call and walked over, hands shoved casually into his pockets, looking down at me kneeling beside the plant. Bought an orchid? He asked, his tone neutral. I grew it myself. I looked up, beaming proudly, deciding in that instant to claim C's accomplishment as my own. Pretty impressive, right? He was silent for a moment, then turned away abruptly. Was his only response as he walked back inside. My smile instantly faded. I gently poked a green leaf. He doesn't recognize you, I whispered sadly to the orchid. He doesn't recognize me either. One morning, I woke early and found Julian standing before the orchid on the balcony, his back to me. A sudden surge of panic seized me. Julian, what are you doing? I cried out, rushing towards him. He startled slightly at my sharp tone, then turned. I saw he was holding a small watering can. It's been dry lately, he said calmly, gesturing towards the plant. Your orchid was about to die. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by embarrassment at my panicked accusation. I stepped closer, wrapping my arms around his waist from behind. I'm sorry, I mumbled into his back. I thought you were going to make it disappear? He finished my thought, pausing before adding, a hint of dry amusement in his voice. Ava, are you actually capable of keeping an orchid alive on your own? I buried my face against his shirt, clutching the fabric, saying nothing. When C.I. was still here, he had always been the one to meticulously care for the orchid. He used to gently pinch my cheek and tease. Ava, darling, this orchid wouldn't survive a single day without me. I'd snuggle closer, grinning up at him. C.I., why did you give me an orchid specifically? He never told me directly. Later, idly browsing online, I stumbled upon the language of flowers. The meaning attributed to orchids: delicate beauty, love, strength, luxury, and perhaps most poignantly rare and precious affection, made my heart swell with a bittersweet warmth. After C.I. disappeared, the orchid nearly died several times. Each time I'd frantically carry the pot around, seeking advice from nurseries, tearfully nursing it back to health. It felt like clinging to the last living piece of him. Now, standing on the balcony, Julian gently turned me around, making me face the orchid beside him. He leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. Ava, he murmured softly, aren't you a bit like this orchid? In that instant, the flower's meaning flashed through my mind again. My fingers trembled slightly. Turning my head, I met his gaze, forcing a playful smile. Are you saying I'm as beautiful as a flower? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. He glanced briefly at the orchid, then put his arm around my shoulders, guiding me back towards the living room. If you say so. Julian suffered from severe headaches, especially after long hours of intense work. I discovered this accidentally one evening. He'd been secluded in his study for hours, unusually quiet. Worried, I went to check on him. The door was slightly ajar. I saw him leaning forward, pressing the heels of his hands against his temples, his face etched with pain. I slipped inside quietly and began gently massaging his temples. He reacted instantly, grabbing my wrist, his eyes snapping open to meet mine. For a fleeting second I saw something flicker deep within them. Confusion, struggle before. The familiar mask of cool indifference slammed back down. But the searching quality was still there. I knew with a sinking heart, he was looking for someone else in my face. He always told me not to look at him and see CI. Yet wasn't he doing the exact same thing? There were moments, frequent and unsettling, when he would just stare at me, his gaze distant, as if seeing something or someone far beyond me. One night, he took me out to dinner after a particularly grueling day of filming. Exhausted, I drifted off in the car on the way back. I woke sometime later to silence. The car was parked, the engine off. In the dim glow of the streetlights filtering through the window, I saw Julian turn towards me, simply staring at my face with that same unnervingly intense, searching gaze. In that quiet moment I desperately wanted to know. Who was Julian Chung seeing when he looked at me like that? My lips felt dry. Julian, I whispered, my voice raspy with sleep. He jolted slightly, turning his head away quickly, avoiding my eyes. "We're here," he said curtly. "Get out." That night, he held me close as we slept, his body warm against mine, but he didn't touch me otherwise. Julian disliked perfume. So did CI. The difference lay in their tolerance. CI, after much playful coaxing and pouting on my part, would eventually relent and let me spray a tiny amount on him. Julian, however, only tolerated perfume on me. He wouldn't wear it himself under any circumstances. I once gifted CI a bottle of subtle, elegant men's cologne, unaware of his aversion at the time. He accepted it with apparent pleasure but never used it. When I finally called him out on it, he sheepishly admitted he didn't really care for fragrances. My face fell. "Does that mean you don't like the perfume I wear either?" I asked, suddenly insecure. He chuckled, pulling me into his arms. "I love the way Ava smells," he murmured into my hair. Later, after prolonged wheedling, he agreed to wear a tiny spritz occasionally, usually obtained through my deployment of highly effective, shamelessly cute begging. Now, when I tried presenting the exact same bottle of cologne to Julian, he didn't even bother feigning pleasure. "You don't need to buy me things like this in the future," he stated flatly. He didn't accept it. My fingers tightened around the cool glass bottle, the knuckles turning white. I tried C's tactic, pouting playfully. "But it smells so nice," I insisted, removing the cap as if to demonstrate. He frowned, reaching out, his long fingers gently but firmly closing over my hand, stopping me. "Ava," his voice was low, firm, "I don't like it." For perhaps the first time, I didn't force a smile, didn't try to cajole him. The warmth radiating from his hand felt strangely cold against my skin. A lump formed in my throat, making it ache. Lowering my head, I asked huskily, "Then, the perfume I wear, you don't like that either?" Silence stretched between us. Finally, he stood up abruptly. "I don't interfere with your personal preferences," he said coolly, before turning and retreating to his study. He didn't return to the bedroom that night. Left alone, I picked up the rejected bottle of cologne, sprayed a little into the air, then carefully placed it next to my own perfumes. On the dresser, the faint, familiar scent filled the room. Smelled like CI. Smelled like heartache. How could I miss him more, when his face slept in the next room? My agent messaged me about a new role while I was tending to the orchid. It was a film financed by Julian's company. My part, unsurprisingly, was minor. Our relationship remained a secret. No one in the industry knew. The night before I was due to join the film set, after a bout of intense lovemaking, I lay curled against Julian's side, tracing patterns on his chest. "Julian," I asked softly, my voice still husky, "will you marry me?" He chuckled, tilting my chin up, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "If you want to marry Ava, then I'll marry you." A familiar sting pricked the corners of my eyes. I smiled, holding up my hand. "Then let's pinky swear." He didn't link his finger with mine. Instead, he captured my hand, enclosing it warmly in his. "You're a grown woman," he teased gently. "Still so childish." The next morning, Julian was still asleep when I left. I watched him for a long time, memorizing the peaceful lines of his face, before leaning down to press a soft, fleeting kiss to his forehead. "CI," I whispered. CI. I was just an 18th-tier actress. My roles were insignificant. My presence on set often felt equally unimportant. My agent's primary instructions were simple. Don't cause trouble, and absolutely no public romances. Beyond that, she rarely interfered. My existence in the bustling world of filmmaking was practically invisible. A year ago, during a different film shoot, we were filming in a remote suburban location. My scenes wrapped up early, but the director asked me to stick around just in case they needed extra bodies for a crowd scene later. So I waited. Sat on a rock by the side of the makeshift set, waiting. And waiting until dusk fell, until I eventually drifted off to sleep. No one ever came to get me. When I woke up, the set was deserted. Pitch-black darkness surrounded me, silent except for the chirping of unseen insects. No cars, no people, nothing. Panic seized me, cold and suffocating. My hands felt icy, tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. I started running blindly, stumbling in the dark, falling hard at one point, scraping my hands, but the fear numbed the pain. Finally, desperate, I managed to call CI. The moment he answered, I burst into incoherent sobs. After patiently deciphering my fragmented story, he soothed me, his voice calm and steady. Ava, don't cry. Send me your location. Find somewhere safe to sit down. I'm coming to get you. I'll be there soon. I don't know how fast he drove, how many speed limits he broke, but he arrived much, much faster than I could have possibly expected. A blinding flash of headlights, then CI was leaping out of the car, running towards me, pulling me into a fierce protective embrace. The tears I just wiped away started flowing again. I clung to him, burying my face in his chest, gripping his shirt tightly. Once I was safely in the warmth of his car, he noticed my scraped hands. Did you fall? He asked gently, examining the bleeding palms. My first thought wasn't the pain but my livelihood. My face. I asked anxiously. Is my face okay? Is it scratched? He chuckled, a sound mixed with exasperation and tenderness, gently cupping my cheek. No scratches. Still the most beautiful face I know. On the drive back, a sudden anxiety gripped me. CI, I asked hesitantly. If I get lost again sometime and my phone is dead, will you still be able to find me? He glanced over at me, a soft smile playing on his lips. Yes. But what if you get lost? I persisted. I'm scared I wouldn't be able to find you. Me? Get lost. He repeated the phrase, frowning slightly as if the concept were absurd. Then his expression softened. You don't need to find me, Ava. I'll always find my way back to you. The sharp sting in my palm brought me back to the present. I looked down at the fresh scrape, bleeding slightly. A humorless laugh escaped me. The same scenario playing out again. Except this time I hadn't cried. And this time there was no CI to call. I'd been helping carry equipment on set and slipped, tumbling down a steep, rocky embankment. I'd been walking for what felt like hours along winding, unfamiliar paths, trying to find my way back, but only getting more lost. Darkness was falling rapidly. My energy was depleted. Apart from a single boiled egg at dawn, I hadn't eaten or drunk anything all day. Exhausted, I sank down at the base of a large tree. My phone battery indicator blinked menacingly. 10%. After a long hesitation, staring at Julian's contact information, I decided against calling him. Someone will find me in the morning, I told myself weakly. Today was my last day of shooting anyway. A little misery won't kill me. Tomorrow I can rest. I opened my photo gallery, scrolling through the pictures of CI and me. Each image sparked a vivid memory, his laughter, his touch, our shared secrets. But I was the only one left who remembered. The phone screen went black. Battery dead. Leaning against the rough bark of the tree, drifting in and out of consciousness, I saw faint lights approaching through the trees. Gradually, distorted by exhaustion and hope, the figure seemed to coalesce into C's face. He gently wrapped his jacket around my shivering shoulders, lifting me into his arms. His own face looked grim, tense. I nestled against his chest, instinctively seeking warmth and comfort, looked up at his tightly furrowed brow, and whispered weakly, Sia, did you come to get me? I woke up in a hospital room. The nurse informed me I'd had a high fever and had been unconscious for nearly a day. It was already the evening of the following day. Later, as Julian drove me back from the hospital, I asked him how he'd known where to find me. He didn't even glance my way, his voice cool and detached. Do you really think I couldn't track your location? His words reminded me. I quickly pulled out my phone, checking the trending news feeds. Relief washed over me. Nothing. No mention of a missing actress, no photos of Julian carrying me. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, my agent's name flashed on the screen. My heart leaped. But her call was surprisingly brief, just checking in, expressing concern. Her solicitous tone felt unusual. I felt a strange sense of being flattered. After I hung up, Julian shot me a sideways glance. How many years have you been in this industry? And this is as far as you've gotten. I bristled silently. Did he think everyone could achieve his level of effortless success? I was grateful just to land small roles. Seeing my silence, he suddenly chuckled. But the sound died in his throat as a car, horn blaring frantically, ran a red light and swerved directly towards us from the opposite direction. The scene mirrored the accident from a year ago with terrifying precision. Fragments of memory exploded in my mind. The truck, the impact, C's body shielding mine. Now, seeing Julian in the driver's seat, my reaction was instantaneous, instinctive. Without a second thought, I threw myself across the console towards him. Screech! The harsh sound of tires protesting against asphalt filled the air, followed by an abrupt silence. I was pressed against Julian's chest, my own heart hammering wildly, mirroring the frantic beat I could feel beneath my ear. We hadn't crashed. Julian's reflexes were lightning fast. He'd wrenched the wheel, swerving sharply, bringing the car to a jarring halt on the side of the road. As my breathing began to steady, before I could utter a word, strong hands gripped my shoulders tightly. Julian's eyes, when I looked up, were blazing, the corners tinged with red. "Who told you to do that?" he roared, his voice shaking with fury. His anger startled me, confused me. A wave of hurt and misunderstanding washed over me, tears stinging my eyes. I bit my lip hard, refusing to cry, unable to speak. How could I explain? Tell him I'd lived through this exact terror before? That CI had done the same for me? Head bowed, I watched fat tears plop silently onto my jeans. I was afraid. I whispered, my voice choked. Afraid something would happen to you. Last time the crash took CI from me. What would happen this time? Would I lose him again? He let out a short, sharp laugh devoid of humor. He turned slightly, gripping my chin, forcing me to look at him. Afraid something would happen to me? Or afraid something would happen to the precious so you see in my face? I caught a glimpse of his other hand, clenched tightly on the steering wheel, knuckles white, veins bulging. He was incandescent with rage. Answer me, Ava. Tears streamed freely now. I reached up, grabbing his wrist, forcing myself to meet his furious gaze. And you? I countered, my voice trembling but defiant. Why are you so angry? He faltered, his lips pressing into a thin line. He stared at me for a long, tense moment, then released my chin abruptly, started the car, and drove the rest of the way in stony silence. After that film wrapped, my career trajectory shifted dramatically. Opportunities started pouring in, supporting roles with substance, then leading roles in major productions. My name began appearing in headlines, my face on magazine covers. My ascent was swift, almost suspiciously smooth. I had no doubt Julian was behind it. He didn't deny it when I tentatively broached the subject, acknowledging his influence with casual indifference. Following the near miss and our subsequent argument, he gifted me an expensive diamond necklace. Later, on my birthday, he took me to an incredibly luxurious hotel, the same one CI and I were heading towards on the night of the accident, and presented me with a matching bracelet. Julian showered me with opulent jewelry, but I rarely wore any of it. He noticed, asking casually one evening, "Why don't you wear the pieces I gave you? Don't you like them?" I held up my bare hand, wiggling my fingers playfully. "They're all so heavy and practical. If you really want me to wear something, maybe try a ring sometime." At dinner that night, a waiter presented a beautiful birthday cake inscribed simply with "Happy Birthday." Julian lit the single candle and told me to make a wish. As I closed my eyes, the image from my last birthday with CI flooded my mind, him presenting a cake decorated with a huge, goofy, smiley face. Every moment with CI, happy and sad, flashed through my memory with painful clarity. God, how I missed him. I never even got to say goodbye. After dinner, I excused myself to the restroom. On my way back, a group of men walked past, clad in the distinctive red and white racing suits. My heart lurched violently. Almost unconsciously, I started following them, my throat tightening, unable even to whisper C's name. Ava. Julian's voice, sharp and low, sounded directly behind me. I froze, watching the racers disappear around a corner. The loss hit me with fresh intensity, and tears welled up, unstoppable this time. Julian's footsteps approached. His hand rested gently on my shoulder. I spun around, throwing myself against him, wrapping my arms tightly around his waist, burying my face in his chest. Please, I sobbed brokenly, just for 3 minutes. Can you just be CI? I missed him so much it felt like I was breaking apart. Ava. Julian stood stiffly, not returning the embrace. 1 minute, I pleaded, my voice muffled against his shirt. Just 1 minute. My tears must have soaked through his expensive shirt. After what felt like an eternity, I felt his hand tentatively, gently, rest on the top of my head. I heard him sigh, a soft, resigned sound. Ava, he murmured, using C's old nickname for me. That single, familiar word shattered my remaining composure. I clung to him, weeping uncontrollably. CI, I choked out. CI. The first time I saw CI, he was wearing that same racing suit, bursting into my life with an electrifying energy. My first thought was, wow, he's gorgeous, more handsome than any movie star. Driven by a sudden impulse, I walked right up to him and asked for his WeChat contact. Later, after we started dating, CI often teased me. Good thing you have such beautiful eyes, Ava, he'd say, grinning. Otherwise, I never would have added you. I'd punch him playfully. What, the rest of me isn't good enough? He'd feign injury, then pull me close, whispering against my ear. Ava is beautiful everywhere. Julian had said something remarkably similar, though the context was vastly different. It was when I first propositioned him, seeking solace in his resemblance to CI. He sat coolly on his sofa, radiating power and control, assessing me dispassionately. You should be grateful, he'd stated calmly, that you were born with decent eyes. I used to fantasize that Julian, when he looked at me with that searching gaze, was trying to find the Ava that CI knew and loved. Then Sylvia Sue appeared, and that fragile fantasy began to crumble. Perhaps even CI had only seen me as a substitute for someone else. One evening after finishing a late-night shoot, still grimy and in costume, a crew member told me someone was looking for me. I wiped some dirt from my cheek and walked over. I saw a woman's back, first elegant posture, expensive clothes. Even from behind I could tell she was beautiful. She turned, and her face confirmed it. Stunningly beautiful, with an air of quiet confidence and gentle grace that felt worlds away from my own chaotic existence. I froze for a second. Who was she? Why was she here? You must be Julian's girlfriend? She asked, pausing slightly, as if searching for the appropriate, perhaps temporary, term for my role in his life. Julian. Hello, she continued smoothly, extending a perfectly manicured hand. My name is Sylvia Sue. I'm a friend of Julian's. I changed quickly and accompanied her to the hospital. I'd been so immersed in filming lately, often just crashing in a hotel near the set for a few hours, that I hadn't seen Julian in person for several days, though we'd spoken briefly on the phone. He hadn't mentioned anything being wrong. Miss Jong, Sylvia began once we were seated in a private waiting area. I assume you're aware that Julian suffers from severe headaches? I looked at her silently, waiting. A year ago, she continued, her voice soft but deliberate, Julian suddenly returned to the country, right during my engagement party to someone else. Around that time he met you. I don't know the specifics of how you met, or why you were involved in that car accident together. All I know is that on his birthday I found him nearly dead. Her words hit me like physical blows. Fortunately, she went on, her gaze level, he was saved. And even more fortunately, he forgot all about you. And now my other engagement has been called off. I gripped the plastic water cup in my hand, trying to quell the sudden panic rising in my chest. So, I managed to ask, my voice tight. Sylvia let out a soft, almost pitying laugh. Miss Jong, don't you understand yet? You were just an accident in Julian's life, an anomaly that never should have happened. Whether he recovers those memories or not is irrelevant. What matters is, her voice remained gentle, yet held an undeniable edge. You should stop clinging to him. Seeing you only aggravates his condition, triggers the headaches. He only needs me by his side now. How dare you say seeing me hurts him? I retorted, anger finally flaring. And how dare you imply that he? She cut me off smoothly. Ava Jiang, she interrupted, leaning forward slightly, her eyes meeting mine directly. Have you ever noticed that there's a certain resemblance between us? Particularly around the eyes. I froze, stunned, trying to process the implication. She lowered her gaze, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. Standing up, she walked a few steps away. Then paused, delivering her final, devastating line over her shoulder. Tell me, Ava, why do you really think CI fell for you in the first place? It was our eyes. The eyes that both CI and Julian seemed drawn to. They resembled Sylvia Sue's. The text message from Julian's assistant arrived while the makeup artist was meticulously applying eyeliner. Mr. Chung has been hospitalized. 5 simple words that sent a chill down my spine. After my conversation with Sylvia, I hadn't gone into Julian's hospital room. I'd only watched from the corridor window for a moment, seeing Sylvia speaking to him with easy familiarity. A sharp pang of heartache had pierced through me. If even C's affection had been counterfeit, just a reflection of his feelings for someone else mirrored in my eyes, what was the point of staying with Julian? Clinging to the impossible hope that CI might somehow reappear? I didn't reply to the assistant's message. The following afternoon, before I even had a chance to remove my stage makeup, Julian himself called. His voice, cool and clear as always, flowed through the phone. What's this? Here I'm in the hospital and don't even bother to visit. By the time I rushed to the hospital, darkness had fallen. His room was quiet, dimly lit. He was alone, propped up against the pillows, working on documents spread across a bedside table. He looked up as I entered, his brow furrowing slightly. Hasn't the film crew been feeding you? You look like skin and bones. I clutched my handbag tightly, lowering my head. Sylvia's revelations had killed my appetite, but surely I hadn't withered away that dramatically. I'm dieting, I mumbled. He let out a short, sharp chirshal. Chichao snort of laughter/derision. Dieting? Are you planning on having me embrace a skeleton at night? I looked up, momentarily stunned. His expression, the teasing glint in his eyes, the exact phrasing. It was pure CI. The memory hit me hard. CI saying the same thing when I was desperately dieting for a role, refusing all his attempts to tempt me with food. He'd finally pinned me down on the bed, growling playfully. Ava Jiang, are you planning on having me embrace a skeleton at night? Who had seemed so genuinely mine, was it all a lie? Ava. Julian's voice snapped me back to the present. He was watching me intently. Who are you thinking about? Before I could answer, the door opened and Sylvia swept in, the click of her expensive heels sharp against the linoleum floor. Julian's expression instantly turned glacial. Out, he commanded, his voice dangerously soft. Tears I'd been struggling to contain finally welled up and spilled over. I turned to leave, humiliated, but Julian's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. Not you, he clarified, his grip firm. Julian. Sylvia began, her polite smile faltering. Didn't you hear me? I told you to get out. And next time, knock. Facing Sylvia, I saw her gaze linger on my face for a long moment, her expression unreadable, before she turned gracefully and left. After the door closed, Julian pulled me closer, releasing my wrist. He leaned back against the pillows, watching me with unnerving calm. All right, he said quietly. Tell me, what did she say to you? I froze, about to deny ever meeting her, but he just smiled faintly. You can't lie to me, Ava. I told him everything Sylvia had said, word for word, including her final cruel question about why CI had really liked me. When I finished, Julian simply chuckled softly. Ava, he asked, his eyes filled with amusement. Are you always this easy to fool? The next morning, his assistant called again. The voice on the phone was flat, robotic, mirroring Julian's own clinical efficiency in business dealings. Mr. Cheng's father and Miss Su's father are old family friends. Mr. Chung and Miss Su have no personal relationship beyond that. A brief, concise clarification. It took a moment for the words to sink in. This was Julian's explanation. His rebuttal to Sylvia's claims. That evening, I returned to the hospital, only to find his room empty. He had been discharged 2 hours earlier. In my experience, neither CI nor Julian had ever outright lied to me. So, when I heard the assistant's explanation, I believed it almost without question. But Sylvia's visit had delivered another, more insidious message. She and Julian belonged to the same world, a world of wealth and privilege far removed from my own. Even if CI hadn't disappeared, even if he was Julian, his background, his family, placed him leagues beyond my reach. How could he ever seriously consider marrying an 18th-tier actress? Maybe Sylvia was right about one thing. Maybe our connection, whether with CI or Julian, was just an accident, a temporary detour. Accidents end. People move on. We would inevitably part ways. Standing on the busy sidewalk outside the hospital, watching the endless stream of cars, I took a deep breath of the cool night air. The realization tasted bitter. Even if marriage was impossible, even if separation was inevitable, couldn't I just see him one last time? The real him? Beep beep. Headlights flashed behind me, followed by two short honks. A sleek black car pulled up smoothly beside me. The window slid down silently, revealing Julian's profile, sharp and defined in the flickering streetlight. "Get in," he commanded softly. The city lights blurred past the window. After a long silence, I finally found my voice, speaking softly into the quiet car. "Julian, let's break up." He slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching harshly against the pavement. "Huh? Break up?" He turned to face me, a dangerous glint in his eyes, the corner of his mouth lifting in a cold, predatory smile. "Ava, have you finally realized I'm not him?" Looking at him then, the intensity in his gaze, the possessive edge to his voice, the line between him and CI blurred almost completely. "Yes," I whispered, meeting his challenging stare, forcing the words out, each one a tiny betrayal. "You're not CI. CI would use the perfume I gave him. You won't." That night, Julian drove me home, dropped me off without another word, and drove away. We had no contact for the following month. Until, after filming my final scene, a grueling sequence shot in freezing artificial rain, I came down with a nasty cold and fever. Lying weakly in my hotel bed, drifting in and out of feverish sleep, I dreamt of CI. Just like all the times before when I'd been sick, he was there, constantly by my side, holding me close, bundled in blankets. "CI. CI." I murmured his name fretfully, nuzzling against the warmth in my dream. A familiar voice answered, low and gentle, right beside my ear. "Ava, I'm Julian Chung." My heart gave a painful lurch. I forced my heavy eyelids open, focusing on the face hovering above me. "Julian." He sighed, a soft, weary sound. "Can't you just forget him?" His words unleashed a fresh wave of tears. I started pushing weakly against his chest, wanting distance, wanting to escape the confusion. But he held me fast. "If even I forget CI," I sobbed, looking up at him defiantly, "then who will be left to remember him at all?" He gently wiped away my tears, then leaned down, his lips capturing mine in a sudden, demanding kiss. I struggled instinctively, whimpering against his mouth, but he overpowered me easily, forcing me to yield. After a long moment, he lifted his head, resting his forehead against mine, his breathing heavy. "If CI always occupies your heart," he murmured, his voice low and rough against my ear, "then where is Julian Chung supposed to fit?" Julian took me back to his penthouse. "Your orchid finally died," he announced casually as we walked in. "Don't you want to see the corpse?" But when I rushed to the balcony, I saw he'd lied again. The orchid was there, vibrant and healthy, clearly well tended. Annoyance prickled me. Just when I thought he didn't deceive me, he pulls this. He leaned against the glass doorframe, watching me, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Just testing," he said softly, "to see if you really are that easy to fool." After finishing that film, I decided to take a break, turning down new roles. Sylvia Sue reappeared one evening while Julian and I were having dinner at a restaurant. This time, her elegant composure was gone, replaced by a barely suppressed fury simmering beneath the surface. She walked directly to our table, stopping beside Julian, slapping a file down in front of him. "Julian," she demanded, her voice tight, "why did you do this?" I focused intently on sipping my juice, trying to become invisible. But I saw Julian calmly place his wine glass down, pick up his knife and fork, and begin leisurely cutting his steak. "To remind you, Sylvia," he replied coolly without looking up, "not to touch people who don't belong to you." Sylvia's hand clenched the file, wrinkling the papers. After a tense moment, she gestured sharply towards me. "Her," she spat out contemptuously, looking at Julian. "An actress? Is she worthy of you?" "Sylvia." Julian paused his cutting, finally looking up, his voice dangerously quiet. "I am Julian Chung. and I won't tolerate your interference. I kept my head down, pretending to be absorbed in my meal, Sylvia's venomous words echoing in my ears. Long after she stormed away, I finally looked up at Julian, asking hesitantly, "Didn't you used to like her?" He met my gaze, then asked unexpectedly, "Ava, when you get a fever, do you just ignore it? Try to tough it out instead of going to a doctor?" The question seemed random. Usually, yes, I'd take some medicine, sleep it off. I nodded slowly, confused. "Why do you ask?" "No wonder," he murmured, shaking his head slightly. "You're so easy to fool." It took me a moment to realize he was teasing me again, essentially calling me dim-witted for being susceptible to Sylvia's lies. Annoyed, I kicked him sharply under the table with my 8-centimeter heel. Julian didn't know. That day I was sick. After he asked where he was supposed to fit, I hadn't truly passed out again. I'd pretended, because in that moment, looking into his eyes, I knew with dawning certainty, Julian Chang and CI were the same person. But if he didn't have C's memories, how could I bear to forget? That was the core of my struggle, the question I couldn't answer. Why did Julian reject CI? Why did he forbid me from even uttering the name? One night, he came home late, smelling strongly of alcohol, clearly having been at a business dinner. I brought him a glass of warm water, finding him already sprawled asleep on the sofa. I gently tried to rouse him, urging him to go take a shower. He stirred slightly, mumbling drowsily, grabbing my wrist and pulling me down beside him. He patted my head clumsily, his voice thick with sleep and alcohol. "Ava, be good. Don't bother me." My struggles ceased instantly. I stared at his closed eyes, holding my breath. See, I had done the exact same thing once after drinking too much. He'd collapsed on the sofa, and when I tried to wake him for a shower, he'd pulled me into his arms, murmuring sleepily without opening his eyes, "Ava, be good. Don't bother me." Seeing Julian now looking so peaceful, resisting being disturbed, an idea sparked. I leaned close to his ear and whispered softly, experimentally, "CI." As expected, his eyes snapped open instantly. But before I could react, the world tilted. He flipped me onto my back beneath him, pinning me effortlessly. His warm breath fanned across my neck, sending shivers down my spine. I heard his voice, husky now, laced with a dangerous edge, rumble near my ear. "Ava Jiang. Starting fires requires putting them out." Whether it was CI or Julian, they shared one frustrating habit: holding me incredibly tightly in their sleep, often waking me up feeling trapped and overheated. With CI, the more I struggled, the tighter he'd hold me. His natural body heat was intense, frequently causing me to wake up in the middle of the night, gasping for air, pleading softly, "CI, I'm so hot, loosen up a little. CI." After a moment, he'd usually kiss my cheek sleepily, his voice low. "Don't move. It's warm in my arms. You won't catch cold." I'd grab his hand, pressing it against my damp neck. "I won't catch cold, but I might actually faint from heat stroke." He'd finally relent then, loosening his grip slightly, chuckling softly. "Better." As soon as I had space, I'd roll away quickly, clutching the duvet, reveling in the cool air. But inevitably, a few minutes later, he'd drag me back, his arm settling possessively around my waist again, fingers gently stroking my skin, a silent threat in his touch. "Ava," he'd murmur warningly, "if you run away again, you really might faint later." Now Julian did the same. His arm was a heavy, warm band around me, inescapable. Feeling hot and restricted, I tried wriggling subtly, hoping to create some space. The arm around my waist instantly tightened. Julian didn't open his eyes, just murmured my name, a low warning rumble. "Ava." I immediately understood and lay perfectly still, resigned. Apparently, memories could fade, but inherent natures remained unchanged. Faced with this blatant, possessive threat, I could only submit meekly. Experience had taught me resistance only fueled his enthusiasm. My struggles excited him, my pleas for mercy were ignored. It was a state of being perpetually overwhelmed, unable to escape but never quite losing consciousness. Slowly, his hand drifted upwards, settling on my shoulder, fingers tracing the faint scar left by the car accident. It was barely visible, usually hidden by clothes, but palpable beneath his touch. Many times, hovering on the edge of exhaustion and sleep after lovemaking, I'd feel his fingers brush against that scar. It would jolt me fully awake, though I always pretended to remain asleep, silent and still. Just like now. In the darkness, he gently traced the raised line of the scar. Where did this come from? He asked softly. I bit my lip hard against a sudden wave of emotion, managing to whisper 2 words. Car crash. That crash left 2 scars on me. One on my shoulder, visible to the touch. The other on my heart, invisible but infinitely deeper. I had vanished, protecting me, leaving this physical reminder. Now the man who was CI yet wasn't asked me how I got it. He truly wasn't CI anymore. Lying stiffly in his arms, silent tears began to escape, rolling down my temples into my hair. After a long silence, his voice came again, low and quiet. How many times have you cried for him? I didn't know. Since CI disappeared, I often woke in the dead of night, staring into the empty darkness, unable to sleep again. Sometimes I cried, sometimes I just sat numbly until dawn. I couldn't remember how many times. I furtively wiped my eyes. If this were CI, he'd be awake now, holding me, murmuring reassurances. I remembered crying once after a director yelled at me on set. Back home I tried to hide it, but CI noticed. He held me and comforted me for hours, and would have driven straight back to the set to confront the director if I hadn't stopped him. Julian wouldn't comfort me like that. He would just wait silently, letting me cry myself out. My agent secured a role for me in a major new film. I knew, without needing confirmation, that Julian's influence was the reason for my rapidly ascending career. Whispers followed me now, speculation that my success wasn't earned, predictions of my inevitable fall once my powerful benefactor tired of me. I ignored them, mostly because they probably contained a grain of truth. Every opportunity Julian provided, I seized with fierce determination, pouring all my energy into proving myself. He never interfered with my acting choices, beyond ensuring the roles were suitable, challenging. I never asked my agent directly if she knew about my relationship with Julian, but her attitude towards me had shifted significantly. It was an unspoken understanding between us. The new film involved a dramatic car crash and explosion scene. From the beginning, the thought of filming it filled me with a low-level dread. Car crash was a trauma I couldn't seem to overcome. Predictably, during the stunt sequence, something went wrong. I hesitated, misjudged, and ended up injured, requiring hospitalization. Lying in the ambulance, fading in and out of consciousness, I managed to grab my agent's arm, forbidding her from calling Julian. Getting hurt was part of the job. Minor injuries happened. When CI was around, he'd patch me up. Now that CI was gone, I could take care of myself. During my recovery in the hospital, my agent hovered anxiously, clearly distressed. I lay quietly, focusing on the throbbing pain from my injuries. On the day of my discharge, she couldn't seem to contain herself any longer. Ava, she began hesitantly, wringing her hands. Do you remember that time you got lost in the mountains? Do you have any idea how furious he was? My agent continued nervously. Actually, someone took photos of him carrying you into the hospital that day, but they all disappeared. He either bought them out at exorbitant prices or used his influence to suppress them entirely. I frowned. No wonder the incident hadn't caused any media ripples. It must have been around then that people within the industry began suspecting our connection. I looked down at my hands. What are you trying to say? She held up her phone tentatively. Can I please just call him? Julian arrived incredibly quickly, just like CI always had when I needed him. Faster than seemed possible. Seeing his slightly disheveled hair, the worried lines around his eyes, I felt a pang of guilt, offering a weak, awkward smile. It's just a small injury, really. Not serious. I can go back to filming today. He quirked an eyebrow, his expression unreadable, no trace of a smile in his eyes. Ava, he asked quietly, what if it was him standing here right now? My fingers instinctively clenched the thin hospital blanket. I looked away, unable to meet his gaze. If it were so, I would dissolve into tears, demanding hugs and kisses, exaggerating the pain, seeking his boundless sympathy. Sometimes the distinction between them was stark, absolute. CI was CI. Julian was Julian. Other times, like now, watching the subtle shift in his expression, the undercurrent of concern beneath the cool facade, they felt undeniably like the same person. But I was afraid of Julian, of his power, his reserve, his potential for coldness. If it hadn't been for the desperate, consuming longing for CI, I never would have found the courage to approach him in the first place. Seeing my continued silence, he stepped forward, carefully scooping me up into his arms, and carried me out of the room. The hospital corridor smelled sharply of antiseptic. I leaned my cheek against his chest, seeking refuge in his solid presence. Just as we neared the main entrance, he paused, his voice low, almost hesitant. Is it really so hard to forget him? I tightened my grip on his shirt, burying my face against him, and nodded silently. As hard, I whispered, my voice muffled, as it seems to be for you to remember. I once told CI that if I ever won an acting award, he had to be in the audience watching, and then present me with flowers afterwards. CI promised he would be there, watching me walk onto that stage. At the time, winning an award felt like a distant fantasy. I was a nobody, grateful for any small part. I never imagined that in the years after CI vanished, I would win numerous awards, large and small. Yet he never saw a single one. The trophy felt heavy in my hand. Standing alone on the brightly lit stage, the applause echoing around me, surrounded by congratulatory faces. In that moment of triumph, the absence of CI felt like a gaping wound. But I did receive flowers. Lots of them. That night, at the celebratory after-party, I drank a little too much. Julian collected me, steering me through the crowd as I leaned heavily against him, already half-drunk, murmuring C's name repeatedly. CI. CI. In his car, the enclosed space felt hot, stifling. I demanded he open the window for fresh air. When he refused, I slumped against the glass, crying quietly. After a few minutes of my sniffling, he pulled the car over abruptly, his sigh laced with exasperation. He turned me to face him, gently wiping my tears away with his thumb. Ava, he asked softly, his eyes searching mine. Who am I? CI. I answered immediately, stubbornly. Say it again. Who am I? I blinked, tears still spilling over, looking directly into his eyes, repeating firmly. CI. He frowned, his voice sharp. Ava. Ignoring his obvious displeasure, I fumbled in my purse, pulling out the bottle of cologne he'd rejected. I held it up towards him. CI. Let me just spray a little bit. Later, tangled together in the back seat, he murmured against my skin, his voice husky. Take off my watch. If I took it off, he conceded, he'd let me spray the perfume. His voice was low, seductive. Still fuzzy from alcohol, I complied, fumbling with the clasp, asking belatedly. Why do I need to take off your watch to spray perfume? He breathed against my neck. Don't want it to get scratched when I touch you later. The events that followed blurred into a haze of sensation and lingering scent. I vaguely remember spraying the cologne liberally, the car filling with the familiar fragrance, sighing contentedly against his chest. Smells like CI now. He chuckled softly, a low vibration against my skin, shifting his position, leaning over me, his lips brushing mine. Ava, he whispered coaxingly, his voice dangerously smooth. Think carefully now. Who am I? Lying beneath him, looking up into his dark, intense eyes, I wrapped my arms around his neck, pulling him closer, defiantly whispering against his ear. CI. Later still, his fingers dug into my hips, pinning me, giving me no escape, his voice a low growl against my skin, demanding again and again. Ava, who am I? I lost all control then, overwhelmed, yet even lost in sensation, my mind clung stubbornly to one name, whispering it over and over. CI. He finally stilled, his fingers gently prying my clenched hands from his shirt, leaving me tear-streaked and vulnerable beneath him. All my senses felt heightened, focused, as if his name Julian Chung was being branded onto my very soul. Until finally, his voice suddenly quiet, almost contemplative, he asked, Ava, who is CI? By then, coherent thought was impossible. I could only respond instinctively, whimpering softly, my voice weak. Sa is Julian Chung. That was probably the first time he, as Julian, willingly wore that scent. But the experience left me with a profound sense of shame, a mortifying memory. Afterwards, every time I saw that bottle of cologne on my vanity, I had to actively suppress the flashback. It didn't work. He seemed to know. He would often pick up the bottle, holding it out to me with an innocent, inquiring smile. If you like it so much, he'd murmur, his eyes glinting wickedly, perhaps I should wear it all the time? Staring at his elegant fingers wrapped around the familiar bottle, my throat would go dry. I'd snatch it back, stammering, No, I don't actually like it that much. He'd just smile faintly, then slowly, deliberately, begin buttoning his shirt all the way to the top, leaving me feeling flustered and utterly defeated. If CI was a playful wolfhound, Julian Chung was definitely the cunning, patient gray wolf. Sylvia Sue contacted me one last time. I had sensed for a while that her animosity wasn't truly driven by affection for Julian, but I couldn't understand her persistent obsession with removing me from his life. Until that final meeting. As we sat talking, her phone screen lit up briefly on the table between us. The screensaver was a man's profile shot. Except for a faint pale scar near his jawline, he looked exactly like Julian. Identical. But I knew instinctively it wasn't Julian. Or CI. The man in the photo possessed a gentle, almost melancholic aura completely foreign to either of the men I knew. Seeing that I'd noticed, Sylvia didn't try to hide it. She calmly opened her photo gallery and placed the phone in front of me. The picture showed a couple exchanging wedding rings. The woman was Sylvia. The man. His name was Nathan Chung, Sylvia stated quietly. Nathan Chung. Julian Chang's identical twin brother. Born with a congenital heart defect, he had died just 2 weeks before his planned wedding to Sylvia. The man Sylvia loved, the man she mourned, was the man in the photograph. Suddenly, her actions made a terrible kind of sense. Her obsession with Julian, her determination to keep me away, her lack of genuine affection for him. It was all because he wore her dead fiancé's face. Miss Sue, I began softly. I understand the pain of losing someone you love. I truly do. But he's just Julian. I knew what it was like, the desperate ache of loss. But I was luckier than her just slightly. And that luck had come at a steep price. She blinked away the gathering tears, forcing a brittle smile. No, she corrected quietly. Who he is doesn't matter. What matters is that I am the only one by his side. A surge of anger tightened my chest. You're using him as a substitute? Aren't you Ava Jiang? She countered sharply. Her words struck me silent. Was I? Hadn't I sought out Julian precisely because he was C's double? Hadn't I clung to him, desperately searching for traces of the man I'd lost? Initially, yes. I just wanted his face near me. A tangible reminder. Thinking about it now, maybe Sylvia and I weren't so different after all. But what about now? Had things changed? If I allowed myself to fall in love with Julian Chung, was I betraying CI? Wasn't that the silent struggle that had tormented me all along? Should I let go of the ghost and embrace the man? Ava, Sylvia urged softly, her eyes filled with a shared, albeit twisted, understanding. Let him go. You know better than anyone. CI isn't coming back. I looked up, seeing the raw grief mirrored in her eyes, and opened my mouth to respond, but Julian's voice cut through the air from behind me. Sylvia, the only one who needs to leave is you. Julian. She stood up abruptly, startled. Julian walked calmly towards our table, his expression unreadable. Nathan is gone, he stated flatly. And I, Julian Chung, will not be anyone's substitute. He paused, his gaze softening slightly as he looked at her. Go home, Sylvia. He wouldn't want to see you like this. And I won't allow it to continue. Later, Sylvia left, taking a tissue with her as she dabbed her eyes, her back straight, her elegance restored even in defeat. Just like the first time I saw her. That evening, curled up on the sofa, Julian closed the book he was reading and looked over at me. What were you going to say to her earlier? He asked quietly. Before I interrupted. I hesitated, then remembered. Looking up at him, seeing the familiar lines of his face under the soft lamplight, the face that belonged to both CI and Julian, I still couldn't quite reconcile the man I loved with the man beside me. Avoiding his direct gaze, I spoke softly about something else instead. Julian. I once asked CI a question. What would happen if he ever got lost? Do you know what he answered? The man beside me watched me intently, silently. He said, I whispered, remembering C's confident smile, that he would always find his way back to me. The car crash that took CI left deep, invisible scars. For months afterwards, the nightmare replayed almost every night, jolting me awake, heart pounding, tears streaming down my face, leaving me unable to fall back asleep. After meeting Julian, the nightmares persisted, but waking up to find him beside me, solid and real, somehow made it bearable. Seeing his face, so much like C's, seemed to soothe the sharp edges of the recurring terror, allowing me eventually to drift back to sleep, usually curled tightly against his warmth, his hand gently stroking my hair. One evening, getting ready for bed, I realized with a start that it had been a long time since the nightmare last visited. Emerging from Julian's study, I paused by my dresser, picking up the small, slightly worn embroidered lucky charm I'd made for CI, the one I never got to give him. I held it for a long time, tracing the uneven stitches. That night I dreamt of him one last time. The dream was a whirlwind of memories. Meeting CI, falling in love, the stolen moments, the laughter, the promises. Then the final day. C's birthday. Tucking the lucky charm into my bag. Planning to give it to him later. He was a racer. I worried constantly about the danger. Finishing my filming early. Meeting him driving towards the hotel. Chattering excitedly about celebrating every birthday together from now on. Then the truck, the screech, the impact. A deafening ringing filled my ears. My vision swam in red. I tried to scream his name but no sound came out. Despair clawed at me. Ava! Ava! The whisper pulled me back. Slowly, painfully, I forced my eyes open. Julian's face swam into focus above me. My cheeks were wet with tears. Bad dream, he murmured, his brow furrowed with concern. I buried my face against his chest, sobbing quietly, my heart aching with an almost unbearable intensity. He held me close, gently stroking my hair. Sure, it's okay, he murmured. I'm here. His quiet presence only made me cry harder. After a long while, my sobs subsided into ragged breaths. My shoulder hurts, I whispered, my voice raw. He stiffened slightly. Then his hand moved to gently touch the faint scar tissue beneath my pajama strap. He leaned down, pressing a soft, lingering kiss directly onto the scar. His voice, when he spoke again, was low, thick with an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. He didn't protect you well enough. His words shattered something inside me. Clinging to his shirt, I shook my head violently. I'm sorry, I choked out, tears starting anew. I'm so sorry. This apology wasn't for CI. It was for Julian. For all the times I pushed him away, demanded he be someone else, refused to see the man right in front of me. I had known for a while how much he tolerated, how patiently. He endured my emotional turmoil, my obsession with a ghost. He'd get angry, frustrated, yes, but he never truly punished me, never abandoned me. It was I who kept demanding the impossible, forcing him into C's mold. On Julian's birthday, we went back to the hotel. The one CI and I never reached. I finally gave him the lucky charm. Its fabric softened with age and unshed tears. The hotel suite was exquisite. On the wall hung a large impressionistic painting of a vast field of flowers, bathed in golden light. In the center, two tiny figures stood hand in hand. Julian closed his eyes, making a silent wish over the single candle on his birthday cake. Watching him, I wondered what CI would have wished for on that last birthday. I would never know. After dinner, as we were preparing to leave, Julian suddenly stopped me. He knelt before me, taking my hand, and produced a small velvet box. Inside rested a simple, elegant diamond ring. My heart leaped, hammering against my ribs. A confusing mix of emotions washed over me: shock, joy, apprehension. I stood frozen, speechless, tears blurring my vision again. I could only look down as he asked softly, "Do you know what I wished for just now, Ava?" A tear escaped, splashing onto his hand holding the ring box. I shook my head wordlessly. He chuckled softly, taking my left hand, slowly sliding the ring onto my finger. Fit perfectly. Then he stood, pulling me into a warm embrace. "Ava," he whispered against my hair, "I wished that you would marry me." Tears flowed freely now, tears not of grief but of release. I wrapped my arms tightly around his waist, pressing my face against his chest, nodding silently, whispering the single word, "Yes." I thought, a final bittersweet farewell echoing in the deepest corner of my heart. Goodbye. End.